I'm a 19-year-old guy. This story happened on a national battlefield. To be specific, Prairie Grove Park in northern Arkansas, right in the Ozark Mountains. On an early December weekend, I and hundreds of others would participate in a reenactment of Prairie Grove, Arkansas. My group of friends were all around my age and would always try to have fun on these weekends, either going to a dance, drinking, or just walking around during scheduled times. It's a lot of fun. That weekend started as usual. Friday, everyone showed up and I met with all my friends. After we got dressed and formed into a battalion, we marched off to our camps. Nothing eventful happened Friday night. Many of us were just tired from driving so many miles. We were sleeping in big tents Friday night to keep warm from the icy winter winds. Saturday started off normally as well. We did a battle for the spectators, chilled around camp, and enjoyed ourselves. Come Saturday night, though, that's when my life would be on the verge of death. After our mock battle, they sent my battalion into picket, which is taking the post and watching for the enemy. When it was my company's turn for picket duty, it was around 1 a.m. This usually lasted about an hour and a half. My partner and I were stationed on the farthest end of our line of pickets. Our left side was unprotected. Around 30 minutes in, we began to hear footsteps to the left side of us. We gathered our rifles and kept alert for any enemy pickets. After 15-ish minutes, we didn't hear anything and we let our guards down to rest. I lit my pipe and I began to relax. Then, all of a sudden, we heard a scream coming from behind us. Then there was another scream in front of us. Something was running through the tall grass we were guarding. We could barely see what it was. What we could make out was this large, dog-looking shadow illuminated by moonlight. We called out to the other pickets to fall back to our officer, but before I could begin the return, a huge rock was thrown at my back from behind me. It hit me, and I fell down, the wind taken from my lungs. I could see my partner running while I gasped for air. As I looked over to where the rock could have come from, I was left frozen in fear. This 7-foot-tall black creature was standing in the tall grass in front of me. It was a pale, rugged thing with black eyes, a slit for nostrils, and a smile as big as its head. Its arms were far longer than they should have been for its size, and its claws were dripping wet with what appeared to be blood, and I could only imagine where that blood had come from. After a few very long seconds, I took a step forward. I gathered my mind and courage and reached for my rifle, hoping to defend myself with my bayonet. I stood up, legs trembling so badly I felt I was going to pass out. I ran and ran as fast as I could then, but I could hear that creature following behind me. With every step it took, it made loud, heavy thuds. I could feel this thing's breath on my neck too. Too scared to turn around, I kept running until I reached my company. I nearly cried when I got there from the adrenaline rush and terror. They were wondering what the heck was going on. Apparently, they didn't see or hear anything that was chasing me, but I was certain that I saw fear in my partner's eyes. That night, they didn't make anyone else go on picket duty. I didn't sleep that night either, scared that the creature would come back. I stayed close to the fire, not for warmth, but security. When dawn broke, I found that I had 3 6-inch long cuts in the back of my coat. After getting the courage to go back to the scene, with a few friends of course, we found a dead deer where I'd been stationed. It also had 3 long cuts going across its body. I decided then to just pack it up and leave. The drive back home was a silent drive. All I could think about was that creature. I didn't get much sleep the nights afterward, too, putting a toll on my grades. I barely passed the semester due to sleep deprivation. I decided to take a 6-month-long break from reenacting, just so I could gather my confidence to sleep outside again. I know one thing. I will never return to that reenactment ever again, fearing that what I met before will not be so merciful next time. I'm Native American. I've lived on a reservation my entire life. The res is surrounded by a thick blanket of pine trees, but after the first few meters, it thins out. Normally, the forest is bustling with hunters, trappers, and the occasional hiker, but the elders of the res forbid anyone from staying in there past dark. Of course, no one actually enforces the rule. It's just like a superstition. There are a lot of superstitions around the res, but this is the most prominent. Around winter break of my senior year, me and my friends had snuck out to do what teens do. Be way too loud and drink enough alcohol to clean out a full-body paper cut. It was me and my 2 buddies. Let's call them J and B. Me, J, and B were hanging out by an old rusty pickup that had been there since before we were born. It had broken down on the edge of the res and had been there ever since. We were having a philosophical conversation about the passage of time, since our adolescence was almost over, and soon we would spout into responsibility. We had nearly polished off the bottle when, out of nowhere, a squad car of all things began to round the corner. Now, we were 18, which is 1 year away from legal drinking age in Canada, so naturally, we took off. We ran straight through the woods. I wasn't thinking about the warnings that had been drilled into me since childhood. I was thinking about what my dad would do to me if he found out what I was doing out here. While I tried to keep track of my surroundings and not throw up at the same time, I quickly lost track of B and J. I stopped in a clearing, grabbing my knees to catch my breath. In between gasps, I let out an audible, "Dang it." While my eyes adjusted to the newfound darkness, I tried to look around to see where I was. Suddenly, it hit me. Reality set back in. I was in the woods, in the dark, halfway to passing out, and based on my surroundings, I was lost. I'd run track in high school, and although I never got any medals, I was still pretty darn fast. But even in my intoxicated state, I knew that I should not have been able to run out of sight from the res. Just as that sobering reality set in, I heard something that made my nausea worse. From maybe 30 feet next to me, in the brush, I heard my own voice. But it wasn't exactly me, if that makes sense. It was more like I was talking through static. Something out there had repeated my words. Dang it. Just as it said that, the forest was met with complete silence. I stood there, shocked. I thought, or rather hoped, it was just one of my friends, but that thought was quickly extinguished when the thing repeated, "Dang it." Exactly as it had before. I didn't think about running. I knew that if I did, this thing would chase me. At least, that's what I thought it would do. But what happened next was much worse. A large bunch began to shake violently, and all I could do was watch from my petrified state as the most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life stepped out of the brush. It stood nearly 9 feet tall. It was deathly thin and seemed to be rotting. Its body was covered in matted patches of fur, its legs bent backwards like a goat. When my eyes met its head, I nearly soiled myself. Its head was similar to a deer skull, but instead it held flaming yellow eyes and teeth sharpened to a point. As this monster slowly lumbered towards me, I tried desperately to run, but my body remained frozen. I never did understand how a person could be frozen in fear until that very moment. The thing was only a few feet away, my life flashing before my eyes, tears dropping from my face with each terrible, slow step the beast took. Suddenly, a flash of light. The monster was no longer in front of me. It took me a second to even realize the thing was gone, but when I did, I looked over to see where it was. Now it was lying on the ground, and on top of it was what looked to be a pale man. At least I thought it was a man. What I saw had ungodly pale skin, thin ribs, and stretched limbs. The thing on top the creature's chest was clawing and kicking and screaming at it. God, that screaming. It echoed throughout the woods. It only took about 4 seconds of that screaming before my motor skills finally came back to me. My mind was screaming at me to run. It didn't matter where, just away from these two abominations in front of me. I ran for 20 minutes straight without stopping until I came to the highway that led to the reservation, and once I got there, I threw up on the pavement. It took another 10 minutes to walk to the res, and the entire time I was terrified that those things would come back. When I got home, I realized I'd lost my keys, so I banged on the door until my dad came to answer it. I must have smelled pretty bad, because the first thing he did wasn't punish me. Instead, he looked concerned and asked what had happened. I was too tired, so I just passed out on the couch. When I woke up, I finally explained myself with a lie, telling him some bogus story about a bear. There is a bit of an epilogue to this story. A few days later, I asked around. I had questions that needed to be answered. I asked about who I should talk to for spiritual guidance. Everywhere I went, I was pointed to one lady, an elder in the center of town. I came to her and we spoke in her living room. I asked her about the things I saw, and this is what she said. She told me of the Wendigo and the Wechuge, two spirits similar in nature. The Wendigo is a spirit that can take over your body when you partake in the eating of your own kind. It will turn you into a ferocious creature that craves nothing more than raw flesh. A Wendigo's skin is said to be resilient. They can mimic voices almost perfectly, but they're ruthless and cunning. A Wendigo will do anything to get its prey, except compromise its hidden nature. A Wechuge is a spirit of vengeance. When a weak person becomes strong and uses his strength to pick on the weak, they will become susceptible to the Wechuge. This will turn them into a deer-skulled, goat-legged creature, which lives to humiliate. They look to kill people in humiliating ways, like mocking them with their staticky voices or using their claws to mark their body. Wechuge have weak skin but heal quickly. They will always eat a portion of their victims as a sign of dominance, but their host can still be persuaded. Whereas when a Wendigo takes over, it can control the victim in whole. But even if you can reason with a Wechuge sometimes, they're not likely to listen. When the elder finished telling me this, I asked, "Which do you think won?" And she told me this: "Both are fast, strong, and cunning, but the Wendigo is more so. A Wechuge's wrath is no match for the hunger of a Wendigo." I once saw a shape-shifting type of cryptid creature when I was about 12 years old in my hometown in Northern California. Upon years of research and listening to stories that were similar, I believe it most correlates with the description of a Wendigo or skinwalker. I'm still not sure what it was or whether or not there is a difference. I was out with one of my two brothers at a friend's house, not too far from the local college on the southern side of the woods, which spans many square miles. I'd go to the same friend's house pretty frequently around that time. Usually, I'd get a ride over there after school, and we'd all go skateboarding around the town, or just go to the mall and hang out, meeting up with people and playing skate, which is like horse but with skateboard tricks. Afterwards, we'd skate our boards back to the friend's house, and I would usually get picked up around nightfall or soon after. Well, something followed our family vehicle home from that wooded area around the friend's house one night. I first noticed this thing jumping from tree to tree in pursuit of our truck as we headed down a long and dark road. At some point, after a few miles of pursuit, it vanished from sight, and I didn't see it until hours later after getting back home. Later that night, I needed my mother for something. I couldn't find her, so I went out the back door to see if she was there. And then, that's when I heard it. Whatever it was, it had put on a sort of off-putting mimicked voice of my mother. I wasn't sure what it was at first, but I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I didn't trust it, and I felt chills when I heard it. It called from somewhere in the dark out in my backyard, saying, "Psst." I replied, "Mom, is that you?" It didn't respond. I figured she was trying to show me something out there. So I walked down my porch stairs, and I asked, "Mom, let me know if that's you." I hear it again. Psst. The sound chilled me to the bone, not being sure what it was, hoping that it was my mom. I stepped a few steps closer and asked again, "Mom, is that you? Are you out there?" That icy voice repeated again. Psst. I soon came to the edge of the shadow cast by my porch light being blocked by the corner of my house. At the same time, something approached the edge of the light, as if the border of the shadow and light was its boundary. When I saw it, I froze, and it did the same. I realized what I was looking at then was definitely not my mother. However, up close, it looked more like it was trying to mimic my appearance. Long hair, similar facial features, but it was still too tall and too pale, with tight skin and deep black sunken-in eyes. It was like I caught something inhuman in the middle of transforming into me. We both stayed petrified. We examined each other. I had no clue as to what its plans were, but as I managed to regain composure of myself, I immediately ran back into the house as fast as I could manage. I did get a glimpse of how fast that thing could move, and I knew that if it had the intention and/or capability, it could have had its way with me. But it let me escape. For what reason, I'll always be confused about. My brothers and I all slept in the kitchen that night until my mom got back, because she had apparently left the house. But when she did come back, she would later tell me that she had also heard the sound before she left to the store. Back in 2016, I had an experience that truly scarred me for life. One night, I'd like to say it was somewhere in the middle of autumn, I'd been planning a sleepover with some friends. If I recall correctly, it was for my birthday, or for one of my friends' birthdays. We were going to have it at my house. The day before the sleepover, I spent all day making sure everything in my house was clean and neat for my friends. When I was outside sweeping the deck, I looked at the miles of forest ahead of me. Then I got an idea. I thought it'd be a fun idea for all of us to explore the woods behind my house during the day. So that day came and I was waiting by the front door for the other girls to arrive. I waited for probably 5 minutes before Caitlin's mom drove into our driveway. I instantly ran up and hugged Caitlin, excitedly telling her about my plan for us to go into the woods. She happily agreed, and we went inside waiting for the others. Before long, the other two arrived. We were all sitting on the couch then. First off, we watched a movie and did some karaoke. Probably normal for us being 13-year-olds home alone. Then I decided it was finally time for our adventure. Joanna and I packed us some bags of necessities for the hike, while Caitlin and Sarah messed around. As we set off into the woods, I noticed that the air had grown a lot chillier since I was last out. I asked my friends, "Do you guys think we should just head back inside? It's getting pretty cold." But they all just wanted some fresh air, so they disagreed. I hesitantly accepted their answers and led the way. After a bit of walking, I saw something dart in my peripheral vision. My eyes glanced over to where I saw it, but before I could see anything, Sarah nudged me and pointed out a bald eagle in a tree. As soon as I gave her a reaction, I looked back over to where I saw the movement, but I found nothing out of the ordinary. About an hour later, I saw the movement again. Once more, I looked over to it. This time, unlike the last, I actually saw something. Running off into a thick layer of trees was this hairy, dog-looking thing. At first, I thought it was just a coyote, but then, as it lifted itself onto two legs like a person, I knew I was mistaken. This thing looked to be about 6 or 7 feet tall on two legs and seemed severely distorted. I screamed and pointed it out to my friends, but it was too late. That creature was gone. They were all confused, questioning me, obviously not believing what I saw. A little while later, after kind of shrugging off the event, my friends and I decided to head back to the house. It was starting to get dark then. We walked for about 5 minutes before we heard a stick snapping behind us. I knew my friends heard it too. It was too loud to ignore. We all looked back, not expecting much, but there stood the creature that I'd seen earlier. It was staring at us, seemingly hungry. It had these beady yellow eyes, a wide gaping mouth, and razor-sharp teeth. This time, we all screamed and ran for our lives. I ran until my legs felt as if they were going to fall off. At some point, I turned to look if the creature was still there, and to my surprise, it was gone. A little while after this happened, I scoured the internet for ideas of what this might be and if others have seen it. I found werewolves and dogmen, both of which were things people have reported sighting. Luckily, my friends and I are all still alive to this day, except now we all have a story to share with our future children and families. I know that was a sleepover that we'll never forget.